try to get around this corner without turning the truck over. Well, we made it.
And we'll begin part one of the Morning Farm Show with a cash grain recap from the Illinois Department of Agriculture.
This is Wednesday report of the grain prices and trends prepared by the Illinois Department of Agriculture. Illinois country grain prices were lower this afternoon. In northern and western Illinois, country grain dealers quoted shelled corn bids down 7 1/4 at $4.19 to $4.49.
I'll start at the beginning. I was born on May the 9th, 1921. I'm 101 years old. I liked horses. I liked to ride horses. So I'd had this thought that I would like to be a cowboy. I don't know just how old I was by that time, but anyway, that was my dream. When I got old enough to leave home, I was just saddled me up a horse and head for Montana. It made a job not thinking how many years it might take for me to ride a horse from here to Montana. That's how my thoughts were. And I liked the Western Story magazine. I subscribed from it for years. Dad had a little bay mare. She had a right front leg that was stiff. The knee had a great big knot on it and wouldn't bend, that front leg. But she soon learned that she could swing it out like that, wide, and still work. She can move around all right. One of my uncles had a spotted riding stallion. He kept after my dad to breed that little bay mare, and stud fee is $15, and Dad wouldn't do it. So finally he said, I'll tell you what, Orville, if you'll let me breed that mare, and she don't have a spotted colt, it won't cost you anything. So Dad gave in to that. She had this little colt, he didn't have a spot on him, so Dad got a free horse. And that's the one I claimed then. I named him Ranger. I never did get to Wyoming with him. I got first Verdon with him. He was born in 32, that little colt was. He got to be 2 years old, I broke him to ride. But Dad had got me farming to where I'd kind of lost interest in that cowboy idea anyway. I was pretty happy being a farmer. Once I got interested in the farming, especially when I got that new John Deere tractor, and I got to drive it. That was stopped my cowboy thoughts.
It was typical of my dad when he got into farming season to get rather tense, and his main worry was getting the job done. And Dad told me to go plow, and he hadn't realized I'd never plowed before. He didn't realize that his kids weren't really all that old. I think I was about 11, and he was in one of his moods where he was kind of grumpy. Things weren't getting done. I knew how to do chores with the animals and all, but I hadn't really done any field work to speak of. He just said, go plow, and that was an A John Deere that had a lever clutch. I tried to talk and tell him I hadn't plowed before. I decided, well, I had watched him plow, I could do it. And I took off and I plowed. And I can remember seeing that black earth turn over, I don't know if it had a 2-bottom plow or a 1, but an A wasn't very big. Anyway, I remember successes, that maybe surprising successes.
First thing that I had to learn to do on the farm was milk the cows. Because back in those days, everybody that was on a farm were self-sufficient for food. Everybody had milk, beef, pigs for ham, chickens for eggs and anything, and gardens and that sort of thing. And my job was, the first one in life, was that I had to milk a cow twice a day. I say cow. Cows, we had 3 or 4 cows. That was the biggest mistake I ever made in my life, was learning how to milk the cow. I wish I had never done that.
Chores that I had growing up probably wouldn't cut it with the safety protocol of today at all.
I'd sit on the seat with him, or we'd hold on to the seat and ride. The safety-wise, it probably wasn't the safest thing in the world.
My job was to carry the milk from the barn. Now, this is when I was 5 years old.
I can prove by my mom's diary that her and I did the milking in June of 1947. I was 8 years old. I've done milking since I was just a little guy.
Bless his heart, he bought me 3-gallon stainless steel milk pails because I couldn't handle a 5-gallon at that age.
I was only 3 or 4 years old, but we still had a team of horses, and it was harvest time, so it was time to do the corn, and a lot of the corn was still shucked by hand back then. This was late 40s.
In a farm family, you were expected to be part of the operation at a very early age.
Following the wagon, so whenever they threw the corn into the wagon, if they missed, then us kids would pick it up and toss it into the wagon.
You got to be a farm boy at the right era to understand this. When we were still using the moldboard plow, and that was the era, like I said, we plowed everything. Dad had a 4-bottom and a 3-bottom plow. But when he came in at night and it was going to rain or anything, there was a bucket with an old paintbrush on it of used engine oil. Well, I'm going to go out and paint the plow, Dad. And I'd go out there on those moldboards that turned the dirt over that were shiny and would rust real good. And you didn't want those to rust, or my dad didn't. And I'd put that coat of oil on them.
Collecting eggs, feeding the hogs, feeding the cattle.
That was my job. It might not sound like much of a job, but you stop and think. That's one of the many jobs you do, or you start developing doing things like that.
You know, you'd hop in a pickup truck and go pick up your dad at a field somewhere when you were probably 6 or 7. We learned pretty early how to drive a clutch.
I've always done chores. I don't know what I'm going to do when I don't get up at 5:15, 7 days a week.
When I graduated from the 8th grade, actually I started helping him farm before I got out of school. I was just 11 years old. He had one little field he had rented down along the creek, which is where Otter Lake is now. In fact, Otter Lake has flooded the little field. It's underwater in the north end of Otter Lake now. My dad took me down there on this tractor with a disc and a harrow behind. And he went, I think, 4 rounds all the way around that fields. And he left me finished that field while he walked back and got his team and planter and planted her. That was my first tractor driving experience.
What did you like so much about driving a tractor?
Oh, just what you can accomplish with whatever you're pulling. Do a good job of whatever you're doing. They used to kind of judge a farmer by how clean a field he'd have after he got through plowing. Tuck all the weeds and the stalks and everything out of the moldboard plow, see. Well, I got it in my head that early on that I got an old Graham chisel plow that I worked my bean fields with a few years instead of the moldboard plow. I thought maybe that was a better deal. What I did with that plow then was, because it wouldn't handle corn stalks, 1 foot spacings on the teeth. I moved the teeth out to 16 inches, put an extension on each corner of it, and I disked my stalks, or I got one of those whirly mowers that run over the stalks, chew them up, and then I could use that chisel plow in the fall. I'm sure the neighbors thought, I was getting sloppy with my work because I'd leave a lot of trash on the top of the ground. But my object was to save the soil from washing away. Wasn't too long till everybody took up the idea, and you don't hardly see a moldboard plow used anymore. Then it came time to harvest the wheat. That was always the big chore in the first 3 years that I worked the fields. I think it was 15 farmers made the big circle southwest of Louder. Bill Handy had the threshing machine. So he would take that from one farm to the next, and then bundle wagons would go out, and they had 4 men that stayed in the field with pitchforks to pitch the bundles up on the wagon. That fellow would get a big load of them and haul it up and park them into that threshing machine. Okay, the grain was caught in, they needed 6 wagons. And my dad asked if he could put that old truck in as 2 wagons. That would make it take every 3rd load. Farmers agreed to do that. I got to drive the truck. That was the best job I ever had, I think. Running that 50 bushel, the whole 50 bushel wheat, just like the wagon did. I remember well, that was during the Depression, but you know, we didn't really suffer. We pretty well raised flour and sugar is about all we had to buy, but it was hard to scrape up enough money even for that, with hogs selling for 3 cents a pound. Had a fat hog on the market only bringing $6. See, corn was 9 cents a bushel. Not much money moving around. I don't know how the people that, I do know a lot of them got them a little garden spot to raise some of their vegetables, the non-farmers, you know. Anywhere to find some feed, get out, and I've seen people walking the fence rows in the spring hunting greens, some kind of weeds they knew was edible if they'd cut them and cook them. I could sympathize with people that lived in town, worked factory jobs and the like, and no means of putting food on their table, only their wages. The farm I started farming on, my dad had just bought it, and it had a new barn. It was 2 years old, I believe. Hadn't been painted yet. So he wanted to get it painted, and he asked a neighbor man that was had 2 little boys and no job. He was just living in a tenant house, I think, on another man's farm, looking for work. And Dad asked him if he could paint, and he said, "I can learn." So Dad hired him for $1.25 a day to paint that barn, and he was glad to get it. I'd feed them boys a lot of beans, you know. In 1936, there was a chinch bug infestation. It was a little bitty bug. I don't know where it originated, but it liked to suck the moisture out of the corn stalks, and they come by the billions. They moved out of the fence rows, I think, or maybe out of the wheat fields. I don't know for sure. But I know they killed the corn. And that's the year my dad had acquired 20 dairy cows. Dad was at loose ends on how to feed all those cows, I know. First, we cut 20 acres of that dead corn that the chinch bugs had killed. Boy, that was a dirty job, cutting that stuff by hand and putting it in shocks. It had little old nubbin ears on it. You could grind it then and run it through that hammer mill. And then he got some blackstrap molasses, bought it in a big barrel, water that down so we could pour it through a sprinkler. We'd fill the manger full of that ground corn, take that molasses and sprinkle out over the top, and boy, they liked that. They'd come running when you opened the door to get their head in there and start eating. And so that's the way we made the milk out of the ruined corn.
With our sandy soils here and everything, when you get behind applying water, it's hard to catch up. And that crop's going to show it in this Mason County area. And you look at the Muhammad Aquifer. It's a large aquifer. It stretches across the state. We are really kind of the what I would say the western boundary of it, and it stretches all the way east over into Champaign, Vermilion County, and some areas like that too. But over here, the characteristics of it vary so much. Over here with our sandy soils and that, we got recharge capacity. This thing has a recharge capacity that I think other aquifers in the world would envy to have. With all the irrigations we have, and the thousands and thousands of acres in this area irrigated, it's really a blessing that we have that here. And that's why there's, starting in the 60s rolling forward, there was this explosion of irrigation in this area. Because when you add water to the sand and follow agronomy and fertilizer practices right, it's a very good producing crop. That's why also, when you look at this area, you get into specialty crops. That's why there are a lot of specialty crops raised here. You know, one thing the Mason County's been known for that for a long time. There's just those specialty crops because they need rain through irrigation and they like sandy soils. So that sets that up for a good combination right there.
As you go through that growing season and the whole year, there's something to appreciate about them all. Harvest is probably my favorite season to go through. That's a farmer's Super Bowl, so to speak. You get to really figure out how well you did and hopefully hit some good yield marks out there. And it's just something that we really enjoy. I think we always take time, especially on a Saturday or Sunday, and my wife, brings some fried chicken and special meals out to the field that we all very well appreciate and, take time. We just got to get out of those machines and slow everybody down and collect yourself a little bit and have a few laughs, maybe. Just let everybody relax, and it's just a special time of year for us that we really do look forward to.
I had farmed, since I graduated from college in 1970. It was a learning process, you might say. I learned really what not to do more than I learned what to do at times. But the thing that I treasured the most, and it didn't come to me until later in life, was the fact that I gave back to the agriculture community everything that had been taught to me through working in different organizations such as Farm Bureau and Corn Growers and National Corn Growers, to put all the policies together of risk management with crop insurance, how it works, developing policies that help people to grow. One of the things that I really enjoyed most was the 15 by 15 by 15, the renewable fuel standard. The renewable fuel standard is what is known as ethanol production.
The standard would create new markets for farm products used to produce these fuels.
By 2015, the year 2015, we were going to produce 15 billion bushel of corn for 15 billion gallon of ethanol. And the 15 billion bushel of corn by 2015, this was when we were making decisions back in 2006, and our biggest yield at that time was 8 billion bushel of corn. So we were going to more than double it in the next 8 years. To me, that is the biggest satisfaction of my life. What I would call the renaissance of agriculture.
Our life is determined by the seasons, winter, spring, summer, and fall. And it's not only the enjoyment of watching the change in the seasons, but also we're dependent on that from our way of life and our business. You're at the mercy of a rainstorm coming in the middle of summer to keep your crop going and to have the very best crop you can. I love the seasons. I love to see the changes. When you farm, you're in tune with everything that's going on. One thing I've always said is that if I could give my father anything when he was farming, it was the ability to predict a little bit better the weather, the rainstorms, the rain systems that are coming through. They've gotten so good with that today that, I mean, that's a huge aspect every day, every morning, every evening. I'm watching the weather to help me determine where I'm going to be in 10 days, 2 weeks. Sometime the calendar tells you that you have to be planting or harvesting, but a lot of times the forecasts will allow me to plan and go, okay, it's going to have a warming trend. It's early April, but we can run because we're going to be able to get our crop germinated. Watching the weather is not only a hobby, it's become a passion for me and for a lot of farmers, I think.
One of the most rewarding parts of living here at the farm is just the peacefulness that surrounds this whole area. Being on the type of land that we're on, not much foliage or anything, and you can see for miles. You can see clear down to where my parents used to live on Route 10 and see the elevator and see as far north as it allows, and east and west. The sunsets and the sunrises in the morning, they are absolutely fantastic. You can see God's handiwork in each one of the beautiful sunsets that we have out here. It just makes you appreciate being out here in the country where you can see those, and you don't have so many buildings around that you can actually see the entire sunset or the entire sunrise.
How'd you entertain yourself when you were out there on the tractor all day long?
I sang by myself when I was out in the fields. If I didn't have something that I could keep my mind on real good, I'd sing the songs, yeah.
I like to sing in the cab of the tractor. And when I got in that cab, I could sing by myself. Nobody complained.
Every night when the teenagers, I shared the double bed with my younger brother Roscoe. I'd sing him to sleep every night. I don't know how he ever got through the night. When I started dating, he'd be asleep by the time I'd come home.
And I've forgotten what I used to like to sing, except I remember those songs I wasn't supposed to sing. I think Martha would be appalled if I tried to sing that again, so I won't.
Yep, I've done a lot of singing then.
What's been especially enjoyable is seeing my kids and my grandkids just develop an unbelievable love for the cow and the showing the cow. Janae, she's always the more sensitive and loved her cows. And she would never give up on anything if there was something wrong with them. She had a favorite red and white cow that had some problems, and she would get up every morning, go tie the cow up and feed her. So she made sure she had the feed that she needed. And she did that forever. And then she had a 2-year-old that was our highest scored classified cow. She was second at the state fair, really a wonderful future. Had the hoof trimmer here to trim her. She trimmed her feet. She went out to the bunk. She was standing there eating. We trimmed another cow, went back to the feed bunk. She's laying there dead. Then she had another one of her favorites. She was in the computer feeder stall eating. We went to get the rest of the cows out of the pasture. We come back in. There she laid dead in the stall. Janae was really shook because all that stuff bothered her no end. And so that night, I was feeling kind of pretty tough, didn't know what to say. So I wrote her a letter from the cow, thanking her for the way she loved her, took care of her, and on about it, and made it the letter to Janae from the cow. and put it under her pillow. And she still has it. It was something that a father and daughter can't begin to develop anywhere else. There's so many things that have happened through the years that just pulls the family together, and you can't put dollars on that.
What was the reasoning for our Economic Development and Planning Board to head down the path of trying to bring the market to the Hill into our community? And what had happened in 2016, we had lost our last grocery store. Mount Pulaski used to have 4 grocery stores back in the day. Like a lot of other small communities, you were self-contained. You had everything you needed within your community. And then that ended in the 60s and 70s. And we understood that for our community to try and maintain, it's either maintain or grow, we needed to have the ability to have at least the basic grocery staples. And once we decided that, then we also wanted to bring the more fresh local foods in. So I got involved in this back in about 2015. And it was created from when we had a group of people who were raising questions about the new wind farm that was coming into our part of the world and going to be putting up towers around our farms and around our countryside. We ended up negotiating with them for economic development money and began using some of those monies to the betterment, long-term development of economic development in our town. We knew that we wanted to try and get a grocery store back in to the community, but a big piece of that was developing a market for local produce, meats, eggs, dairy, vegetables, nuts, grains. How do we develop that market to where the market on the Hill initially was helping move those products through the store and help our local economy? Because all that money stays there. So when you ask the question, why do we move down this path, it's health, it's economic development. We just circle that money around and around within the community. Plus then we're producing locally fresh foods that to me are much better to eat. And they're one day away from being processed or picked, and they're on your table the next day. So we got the market on the Hill open in 2020. And a piece of that puzzle was also developing a local food processing center to where we start creating more markets for our local producers. And our local producers we consider Central Illinois.
Well, this is cabbage. We have about 15 acres here that we raise.
We're trying to deal in the Peoria to Bloomington, Decatur to Springfield area. You want just about Mount Pulaski. And what we want to do is start trying to become a distributor into the institutional type buyers, so the hospitals, the nursing homes, the schools. And so our idea was we become the marketer, we become the distributor.
5 pounds of jalapenos.
You do what you do best, and that's raise a product, raise what you want to raise, be a farmer. That's why a lot of people got into it. We'll buy your product, and then we'll take it from there and get it into the institutions.
Well, how do I describe Larry? He was 6'2", and a healthy farmer. Let me put it that way. He was probably one of the most fun-loving persons that I ever knew in my life, and he was the kind of person that he always had a smile on his face, and he was always boisterous, a lot of fun, a very I would say a very heart-struck person to help other people. He was always there to help one another, and he thought family was the best thing to have around him. And he loved his family, and he showed it in lots of different ways. He was a very big Christian. We went to church every Sunday, and He praised God and thanked God so many different times for all the crops and everything that went well here at the farm, and I think he felt very blessed. And he was the kind of person who could light up a room when he walked into the room. So it was always a joy to be around him, and there was always a lot of laughter and always just a lot of fun times and joyous times, I would say. He was very concerned about what he did on the farm, just to make sure that he did everything correctly and within the ways that they should be done for his farming practices and his hog practices. He enjoyed every aspect of farming, and at times I would say, "Are you sure there's something else that you wouldn't want to do with your life other than farm?" And he said, "No, I don't want to do anything but be here on the farm and raise hogs and grow corn and beans." So that was my Larry. We were diagnosed in January of 2020 with pancreatic cancer. We had a few tears together, but, we just thought that, we could do everything that we could to beat it. And what did one of his doctors say? It's one of the last cancer frontiers that we have to conquer yet. When something happens, like when you lose your spouse and your partner in life, you don't always know how you're going to go forward. But God has stepped right in and shown me the way. And, we've been 4 years now without Larry, and God has shown us every step of the way. He has put the people in our lives that needed to be there. It's just, I'm so thankful. I feel so blessed and so, thankful that God has stepped in and like the poem says, not only walked beside us, but picked us up and carried us many times. So to that, I'll be eternally grateful, and I am. I just pray to God that He has a succession plan for us now here. And I know He's working on it. So we'll go with the flow until God shows us the way. The kids and I had talked about it, and the kids were really ready for me to put the farm up for sale, and they were ready for me to not be out in the hog buildings anymore. I think they were worried about me for some reason. I'm not sure. They said, "You could get knocked down, Mom, and those hogs would eat you, and we wouldn't know it." I said, "Well, so far so good. They haven't done that yet." I think you get to the point in your life when you know that it's time to phase out one part of your life and start looking towards another portion of your lifetime. We had kind of settled on maybe getting out of the business, having the hogs gone in October. But the company that we grew for ended up getting purchased by another company abroad, and they phased out all of the production in the United States. Pretty much at the same time that we were looking at maybe wanting to get out of the business. So maybe that was a gift. I was able to buy a lot of the hogs that they still had here at our farm that we didn't ship out. So we kept them and we grew them out, and that's what we're finishing up using here for the meat business right now until we figure out what we're going to do for sure. So we've been cleaning the buildings and getting them all fixed up and cleaned out so that we could show the farm off and just have everything in good order for someone who might want to purchase it and come into it and be able to go to work right away.
I was probably the only one in my high school class that wanted to be a farmer. It wasn't very popular back in the 50s. But that's all I've ever wanted to do, and that's all I've ever did. I didn't mind the hard work. I've got artificial knee and an artificial hip and an artificial shoulder to show for some of that hard work. I think my grandparents and parents probably could have used those too, but they didn't have them back then. You just limped. Most cows we ever milked was 28, because that's about all we have room for without expanding. We got over 28, I started looking for somebody to go to the sale barn. I'm kind of famous for that. That's enough. We milked 8 cows this morning, and I think by tomorrow morning it'll be down to 6. But that's not going to last very long. We're going to get out of the dairy business. My alarm comes on at 5:15, 7 days a week, and I get dressed and go out. And we milk the cows and come in and eat breakfast. I don't know. You might be here when we do the last cow, and I might see a tear coming down the cheek. I doubt it, but I can't imagine not doing that every day, twice a day. But it's time.
You need a hug for your last day?
I wasn't going to give him up.
All done. When you're done, you're done. End of an era.
That's it.
No, I don't think I'll be too sad, but we'll see.
Are you ready now?
I'm ready.
You want to drive this for a while?
Nope.
Okay.
When I was much younger than I am now, I mean a lot younger than I was now, even though it was a time when I really didn't want to go into farming, I couldn't get enough of going out in the spring and driving the tractor on an old 2-bottom plow or a disc, an 8-foot disc or something. I couldn't get enough of that, although I didn't want to do it as a career. I liked it, and that has long since passed. I will do it, but I don't do it because of the great joy of doing it. I still like to be out in the harvest, except when the combine breaks down, which is about every day and a half. And I think a lot of things about farming that I really enjoyed when I was younger. I don't dislike it, but there's no joy in it anymore. Other than that, I will probably continue doing what I did. And as far as doing the field work, there's nothing hard about that. All one has to do is sit in the seat and turn the steering wheel. You don't have to be in number one health, and that shouldn't be a problem.
I'm not as agile as I used to be.
But as far as the manual labor is concerned, it's a little more difficult. But let's face it, this happens to all of us sooner or later. There are 18 in our high school graduating class, and it's very possible that I'm the only one left. Nature caught up with everybody else, and it will be too sometime. Probably right after this interview is over.
Well, I hope not.
I guess what makes a good day on the farm is when
What's your definition of a good day?
A good day on the farm. That's an interesting question.
Well, it's a kind of a day when you get up in the morning and you have plans made for the day, and you go out and the tractor doesn't fall apart, the combine doesn't break down, and you get done what you want to do.
If you're plowing or disking or planting, you can turn around and look behind you and see that you're accomplishing something as the day goes by.
Everything goes according to plan, which is not always the case.
When you wake up in the morning, you never know what you're going to run into during that day.
A good day on the farm is you get the cow's milk.
Your grandkids had a good day at school when they call you now.
Watching these crops grow, from the first time you start being able to see that crop emerge out of the ground, it's another day of promise here down on the farm.
Walking out to the milk house, and I had water come out of the spout.
Your son tells you how much he enjoys farming. And,
Well, a good day would be about like today, a nice sunny day and the ground right after work.
Just the fact that you could make your own decisions.
you're productive and you got to watch the sun go up and the sun go down. And you got to watch some geese fly over and maybe a couple deer out in the field. And you go, life's pretty good.
That's a good day on the farm.
And one thing about being on the farm is that the people that I'm in contact with every day are good people. As a whole, I think farmers are probably the most highly respected group of people in the country.